Welcome back to our daily devotion series with the book Jesus Calling. Today is Wednesday, February 13th. We have basically two passages for today's devotion, and they both kind of come around the time of the death and resurrection of Jesus. And so I'd like to read the one that comes first before the death of Jesus. That's from John 14, verse 27. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled. And do not be afraid. The second reference then comes from Easter Sunday, from John chapter 20, verses 19 to 21. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Again Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." Peace be with you. That's the theme of today's devotion, and that's kind of been a theme throughout this week as we've seen in our previous devotions. One of the things I really appreciated about how the author brought in that peace from Jesus in this devotion was by directly referencing his death and resurrection. She writes, "To provide this radiant peace for you, I," speaking from Jesus' perspective, "died a criminal's death," getting specific about what it took to give us peace. She also says, "Ever since the resurrection, this has been my watchword, peace." So I really appreciated that about the devotion. One of the things I've picked up by using this book, and maybe you've picked this up through our series, is that sometimes the expressions about what Jesus does for us are kind of vague and generic. And I understand they may not be wrong, but I wonder what profit it is for a person in their faith life if you don't get specific about exactly what Jesus has done for us. When we talk about our faith and we talk about Jesus, it's not just talking about these lofty terms that make us feel good, that are kind of generic and just kind of out there. We want to get specific because Jesus was a real person. Jesus exists today still as true man and true God. We're not talking about some fairy tale here. We're talking about somebody who did come to earth as God and man to suffer and die for us, to rise again from the dead. The Bible goes out of its way to be so specific about what Jesus has done for us so that we can. Think of the statements of faith that we have, like the Apostles' Creed, how specific that is about all those details that Jesus did for us. Because God has given us those details, we should use them. We shouldn't be vague and generic. And so I appreciate that in this devotion. I'd like to see a little bit more of it throughout the book, I think, of really helping me and reminding me as a Christian as I go through these devotions, what did Jesus do for me and how did he accomplish these blessings that we center on in our devotions? Another thing that I perhaps questioned a bit in the devotion book is when the author connected the peace of Jesus from the resurrection as giving to those who yearn for Jesus. She says, peace has been Jesus' watchword ever since the resurrection to those who yearn for him. Again, I think we start to see some of this decision theology come into play here, where I give the reader the impression that they must choose or accept Jesus in order to have his peace. There are many accounts in the Bible where Jesus does bring his peace to those who yearn for it. I think John chapter 20 is a good example of that, where the disciples needed that peace. They were yearning for Jesus again. They wanted to see him again. You think about some of the other miracles where Jesus would tell people, "Go in peace, your faith has made you well, go in peace." Those people certainly had a longing and a yearning for Jesus by faith. And so the expression itself perhaps is somewhat appropriate. But when you look at a reference like John 14, verse 27, the other passage, remember when Jesus said that. Jesus spoke that to his disciples before his death, that be on the very night where they would all forsake him, they would all go astray. They weren't yearning for Jesus that night. They fell asleep in the garden. They all ran their separate ways when the mob came. They forsook Jesus, some of them more personally than others, like the Apostle Peter. So the peace of Jesus does not just come to those who yearn for it. That's the beauty of grace. Jesus gives us his peace even when we don't yearn for it. Because part of that peace is not just feeling good about my Savior in my heart, but knowing that my sins are forgiven. That even though I have rebelled against God's law, I have transgressed, I have turned away, Jesus still gives me the peace of forgiveness. And that's really what the beauty is. It's not in being able to raise my hand and say, yes, I yearn for this gift, so Jesus, can you give it to me? It's being able to say, even though I don't hasten after it, even though I don't always want it in my life, that he still comes to me with his love and his mercy, with his peace. So, thanks for joining us again today. Find more at burdenblessing.org, and like we heard in our devotion, may the peace of Jesus go with you.